Brady is an artist and illustrator, born, raised, and working in Honolulu, Hawaii. He received a BFA specializing in drawing from the University of Hawaii at Manoa in 2012. In 2013 and 2014, Brady curated the exhibition Crossing Cultures, the Art of Manga in Hawaii, which explored the influence Hawaii has had upon the work of 12 local manga artists and writers. He currently works as collections manager for the Honolulu Museum of Art, which he says offers a wonderful opportunity to handle and experience a variety of art from all over the world on a daily basis. Please welcome Brady Evans.
Maybe I should have gone after Jamie, she's taller. Okay, I just want to plug a really quick thing real quick. On October 20th, which is a Thursday, at the Honolulu Museum of Art School, I'm going to be doing a comics workshop from 6 to 8 p.m. and it's through the Honolulu Printmakers Nexus Book Arts Fair programming that they're having. So you can register online at honoluluprintmakers.org, and it's $10 and it covers the cost of materials and everything, and hopefully it'll be a lot of fun. So just to kind of reiterate what Bluma and Jason talked about in regards to the community and Kauai-Con, and I pretty much grew up going to the Kauai-Con. I was 15 when it first started, and I've gone every year since then. I think it's been 12 years, I think. 12 conventions. Sure. And I was about 15 or 16 when I first met Audra and Scott and Jason, and I think I met Noma a little later, but I can honestly say that it's been a big chunk of my life, and probably more than half of my life I've spent in that community, and it's been fun being a part of it and realizing that, hey, it's lasting longer than I thought it would. And I'm happy to ride the wave and also produce this exhibition called Crossing Cultures, the Art of Manga in Hawaii, that I put together. I worked on it from 2012 to 2013. The show opened in 2013 at Windward Community College, Gallery Iolani, and it traveled to the Japanese Cultural Center of Hawaii in 2014. And my background is in studio art. I got my BFA from UH Manoa, but I also worked a lot in the gallery there, and I transitioned a bit into museum studies. And so this project was really a combination of the two of my passions of comics and manga and local culture and museum studies and exhibition design and management. So this project was like about a year and a half long worth of research. It was a lot of interviewing people in the community, artists. I selected there were seven different projects, different comics that I chose for the exhibition, and some of them had an artist and a writer, some of them were just an artist, and so it came out to about 12 different people that I worked with. And I also worked with people like Jason and Bluma and interviewed them about the community and featured their stories as well. And the aim of the exhibition really was to examine manga in Hawaii and what made the work here that, I guess for simplistic sort of way we would call it manga, what made it unique in Hawaii. I also was a little careful in calling the artist manga artist, because I feel that not all the artists would identify as manga artists. So instead, the artists are all heavily influenced by manga in some way or another. Their works may not immediately, the manga might not immediately come to mind when you look at their work, but deep down, or maybe on the surface, or in a large chunk of it, there's an influence from manga. So I looked at how people were things like reinterpreting Japanese culture, reinterpreting local culture, local history, even Hawaiian culture and Hawaiian history, and even recent developments in manga in Japan, and how it kind of all gets kind of mixed together in Hawaii. And a lot of times we call Hawaii this melting pot of different cultures. And I went into it with the assumption that manga is the same way, and I researched it and tried to dissect it in the same way as well. And so this one panel features the work of Audra and Furiichi and Scott Yoshinaga, Nemu, who just talked earlier. So I kind of went backwards in time when it came to the history of manga in Hawaii. And in Japan, it's manga came before anime and TV shows. A lot of the TV shows were influenced by comics. But in Hawaii, we kind of got things a little backwards. We instead got the TV shows first, as Guma talked about earlier. Seeing the TV shows got people interested in that culture, and then later in the 2000s, the manga came along. So a lot of people who grew up and were born around this time, born in the late 60s, early 70s, probably in Hawaii, probably knew about or watched a TV show called Kikaida, which is based off of, or it was created by a manga artist. It's about a mechanical superhero. It's a live action series, so it's very, today we might look at it and think of it as kind of corny in terms of the special effects, but at the time the special effects were very, very, very unique for the time, and I think people in Hawaii didn't, and the kids growing up didn't automatically think that it was Japanese, or that it was different, and that there was something really engaging about it. And so this image I love, it's when Kikaida appeared. Kikaida, I think it's Kikaida 01, and I didn't watch it, I didn't grow up watching the series, so, but when they made these public appearances, like at Arakawa's, which no longer exists, or like at Pro Ridge Mall, there were so many kids, and now my friends and some people that I work with who were little kids at the time said that, they were there with thousands of other sweaty kids and sweaty parents and waiting for hours just to see appearance of these costumed actors to come out, and it just was an amazing phenomenon. And speaking with Joanne Ninomiya, who was responsible for bringing over this TV series to Hawaii, she said that she never expected it to be this big and to continue to be very popular with new generations, but also the same people who grew up with it and who are now in their mid-40s, I believe. No, I don't want to date anyone in particular. So we have live-action TV series, and in the 80s and 90s, what Guma talked about as well, we have development of comic book stores across the U.S. and in Hawaii as well. And here are two examples that are still in existence: Gecko Books and Comics and Collector Maniacs. Although there's not as many nearly as there used to be, probably at the height in the 80s and 90s. But it was during this time and during these areas that we see the beginnings of anime clubs, like Josh, things that that Guma talked about and that Audra was a part of, that were kind of like little pockets of culture and pockets of fandom that weren't connected at the time as nearly as much as they are today, but people who were coming together and discussing things and realizing that this was manga and anime were anime at the time were very different than their American counterparts. So I'm going to talk a bit about some artists locally that I featured in the exhibition that show influence, that were strongly influenced by various manga, anime things that all work in Hawaii. And so John Murakami is, you might recognize his work from local kind greeting cards you see at Long's, or he has a comic in the Star Advertiser in the Sunday newspaper every other Sunday. And John is very influenced by Kikaida and those tokusatsu live action TV shows that he grew up with. And so this character he created, Gordon Rider, is a parody of those TV series. So instead of a very heroic character, he's, for one, he's based off a real person, and his costume is made up of things that you might find in an office or just on the fly, like construction construction reflector vest and toilet paper for a scarf and 2 little drinking straws for an antenna, and just basically things you can find anywhere. But and he's not the most skilled of a hero, but I think he has a good heart, and that's kind of what makes him the protagonist and makes him kind of like a local superhero. But John works a lot of local culture into it, localism, and not as much pidgin, but I think more local gags and humor into the works that are very popular with people that grew up here, and people that grew up in Hawaii during the 70s at that time. Some more stills from Gordon Ryder. It's actually been going on for about 10 years as well. I think a little more than 10 years that John's been working on it. On and off. He has other spin-off series too. This isn't kind of his main gig. I'm gonna go into Roy Chang's work next. Roy Chang's did a book called Casing Kiara and the Curse of the Ki'i, and Roy is of Native Hawaiian descent, and he's interested in mythology of Hawaii, and so he produced this book a few years ago, I believe 2011, and the book is it's not quite a comic book, it's a graphic novel in the sense that it's a light novel interspersed with about 100 different manga illustrations. So Roy is very influenced from Hayao Miyazaki and Spirited Away, movies like Spirited Away. And so what Hayao Miyazaki did was he took a lot of Japanese traditional culture with Spirited Away and redid them in a contemporary way and kind of made them new again for younger audiences. So Roy wanted to do something similar where he took Native Hawaiian stories and put them into a contemporary setting and showed it in a manga page setting, which I think is interesting. He also adapts a lot of cinematic tropes in his manga. Like you notice there's no text. In these, the text is all the text is on the next is on the page over in like a prose style. So it allows him to show the movement of the camera, like in the top left corner, Native Hawaiian birds, and then centering in on the 2 girls as they landed over there. And I think it shows, it makes the page a lot more dramatic, and it really shows off how manga can be very visual storytelling, be very powerful in its visual storytelling. Journey of Heroes is produced by Stacy Hayashi and illustrated by Damon Wong, who's an animator. And Journey of Heroes tells the story of the 100th Infantry Battalion and the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. And there's been a lot of different stories and things written about these 2 groups who are made up primarily of Japanese Americans, a lot from Hawaii and some from the mainland, that fought during World War II and were the most decorated militarily groups of that time, even though they faced a lot of discrimination for being Japanese American. And what I think is interesting about Stacy's work is that she utilized, or her illustrator utilized, a form that's very familiar in manga called the chibi, or chibi means small, or the diminutive in Japanese, and it's a style that's like kind of like used in comic relief usually, like a large head, small body. And what I found interesting was that she decided to use this style, which is normally used in kind of a comical way, to get younger audiences interested in this story. And the story is actually quite, it's about war, and there's some very funny moments and very lighthearted moments, but there's actually some very dramatic moments as seen in the page farthest to the right there. And I feel that her work is at the same time very respectful of the veterans and who are still alive and who worked with her on this project. But it's a good introduction, I think, to the story to people and younger kids who may not be as well aware of the achievements of this group and their elders. Stacey is also very active in making her long-term goal is to make a movie out of this story, and she's, I believe, working on it right now and in pre-production. So hopefully we'll see it soon in theaters. Another story that deals with local history is Hamakua Hero by Patsy Iwasaki and Avery Burrito, who are our Big Island representatives for the exhibition. And this story is about Katsugoto, who was lynched, who was Japanese who moved to Hawaii, was in a plantation worker, but he was able to buy his freedom, basically started his own business, became a target for a lot of the other Caucasian businessmen in the area, and he was got his get out put on, and he was lynched in 1889, I believe. And so, in a similar way that Stacy works with Journey of Heroes, Patsy decided wanted to make a comic that was based on this man's life, and in order to bring it to today and to show it to younger generations. And she told me that she thought of doing it in a manga format because manga is often used for very dramatic stories and it can be used for more difficult storytelling, difficult stories. I mean, this story basically tells, it's a very lively story, a very nice story as well, but it ends with his death, which was a very violent death. But it does it in a very tasteful way. And again, it's a good primer for someone who's more interested in learning about local history in this story. Finally, I'd like to end with the work of one of the younger artists in the exhibition, Tara Tamayori, who is born in 1989, so she came of age in the early 2000s, and which is around the time when manga was being widely produced and translated in the US, and you get what Audra and Jason touched on with major amounts of it coming in. And so Tara is probably the one artist in the exhibition who's very closely up to date with current trends in manga, and her work, I feel, has the most contemporary manga feel to it. So she, I feel, kind of represents the more current time, a more current trend that I see a lot of artists who are actively looking at things online, looking at what people are doing in Japan and around the world, and I feel that manga is becoming much more globalized in terms of style, and then Audra kind of touched on as well with artists like Ken Niimura, who's international, and whose style and work can't really be pinned down to being merely Japanese or merely European or so. And I think that's kind of what's really interesting, and what piques my interest now in manga is that mix and that international mix, sort of like the theme of the exhibition, Crossing Cultures, but instead of Hawaii cultures and ideas mixing, we have it happening around the world and happening very quickly too. So, and the exhibition is free to view online at hawaiianmanga.com. So if anyone's interested, the images from the show are online, as well as all the text, and there's a lot of free digital downloads, including a manga that we wrote and produced that tells the history of manga in Japan, that you can download and print out and use for educational purposes. So hopefully you'll be able to check that out when you have the time. So that's it for me. Thank you.